So go ahead and get cozy. I'm going to be reading chapter 1, the full chapter 1 from Love Wasn't the Goal. But by no means am I a voice actor. But if you like to hear this book on audio, it is available at the link in my bio. It is narrated by Edwin Andrews and Regina C. King. They did an amazing job narrating this book, and you can get that from my store directly, from Audible as well. Tonight I'll be reading it in ebook format, and it is also available in paperback from the TikTok shop. So you have 3 ways that you can grab the book: audio, ebook, paperback. If you grab it in paperback from the TikTok shop, it will be signed and include some free merch. So that's a little bonus there for you. So what is Love Wasn't the Goal about? Love Wasn't the Goal is about Nico, who wanted to be a player in the NBA before an injury in high school halted all his dreams of going to the NBA. But after, he decided that he wasn't going to let that stop him from living life fully and enjoying as many women as possible. So that's what he did. Then there is Destiny. Destiny believes that she is with the man who is going to be her husband up until he breaks up with her. And you know what they say, to get over one, you have to get under another. Well, Nico was the one she gets under. And this story is a surprise pregnancy romance. If you have not ever read a surprise pregnancy romance, they're pretty interesting. It's actually one of the first ones I've ever written, but I had so much fun writing it, and maybe I'll even revisit the trope again in the future, but it is an amazing trope and so many people have enjoyed it, so I think that you guys will actually enjoy it. But with all that said, if there's no comments, hey everybody, thank you guys for joining. I'm going to go ahead and get started with the reading of Love Wasn't the Goal. This book here, it's available in my TikTok shop. It's available in ebook format, and it's also available in Audible, because I am by no means a voice actor, but I'm going to do my damnedest to read this the best that I can and make you guys fall in love with these characters because they are amazing. So with no further ado, I'm going to go get into it. Let me go ahead and mute my music. Hopefully that you guys can hear me okay. I'm going to take a big gulp of my water to make sure that we don't have to stop with me having a scratchy voice. All right. So I'll get started. I'll read straight through, and then at the end, let's chat about it. Tell me how you guys like it. All right, here we go. I'm going to try to sound like the voice actors when they get started on their chapter. Love Wasn't the Goal. Chapter 1, Nico. Sitting in a hospital room, ass cheeks out, wasn't the way I liked to spend my day. But I had become accustomed to my annual checkup. For 10 years straight, I had to visit this cardiologist to ensure my heart was still pumping the way it should and no further symptoms were occurring. Being that I was able to sit there and stare at the diagrams of hearts on the wall was a good indication that I hadn't succumbed to my diagnosis. 10 years ago, I wouldn't have thought I'd be able to say the same. That day on the basketball court when I fainted, felt a light shining in my eyes. I just knew I was about to greet the Lord, but had no idea what I would say or if I was ready yet. Later, I found out the light shining was just the paramedic checking my vitals before wheeling me off to the waiting ambulance. The Lord wasn't ready for me, thank God. I laughed to myself as I waited because Dr. Wilson was never on time, including today. My legs were dangling over the table, my clothes tossed on the chair beside me. I had glanced at the clock at least 5 times already, and it seemed that only 5 minutes had passed. I was growing impatient because the weekend was calling me, and Dr. Wilson was the only barrier between me answering. I heard a light tap on the door before he walked in. "Doc," I said with a smile. "Nice for you to join me." He laughed and patted my back. "Nico, it's always a pleasure to see you." The short black man with a full head of gray hair, wrinkled skin, and a beard closely shaved had aged over the years. I was thankful to have consistent care because I could skip the formalities and get to the good stuff. "How are you feeling?" Except I couldn't just give him a generic response. Still breathing, my smile went crooked. So I guess pretty damn good. He shook his head. Nico. When I was first diagnosed with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, it was not only a lesson in sounding out medical terms, but a lesson in learning the symptoms and the long-term impacts of the diagnosis, which was the kicker. I wasn't just on the court playing my heart out that day. I was playing for the Scouts. My Division I scholarship was already concrete, but I had a few other schools who were interested in me. I was playing for the opportunity to dominate at the next level. When Dr. Wilson and I first met, it wasn't exactly on the best of terms. I may or may not have had a few choice words shouted at the four walls while he was in my presence. I had to eventually realize it wasn't him who gave me the disease, but learning who did was the other blow I wasn't ready for. During all that learning, I realized it was a genetic disease carried by my mother, passed on to her favorite son. The fucking irony. Although the diagnosis didn't have to end my basketball career, my symptoms proved to be a challenge to manage. Therefore, my dreams of playing ball quickly came to an end. The colleges who were all after me were no longer interested. That Division I scholarship that was prominently offered was withdrawn with their sincerest apologies for my diagnosis. Being able to tell Dr. Wilson I'm pretty damn good was a highlight in our 10-year relationship. Because honestly, it took me some time to get there. My diagnosis and subsequent end of my basketball career came with months of anger, followed by sadness. Those who knew me back then likely found me to be quite the asshole, including Dr. Wilson. At least that's what he told me years later. Any tightness in your chest? Shortness of breath? Trouble when you are active? I repeated, active? Followed by a hearty laugh. Nah, Doc, I haven't been experiencing any of that. He took notes on his tablet, remaining silent as he did. When he finally looked up, he was coming toward me with his stethoscope outstretched. All right, let me take a listen. He instructed, deep breath in, as he moved it around my chest and then my back. Sounds like your heart, which probably meant he could hear the irregularity that had become infamous. Good, glad it's still in there, I bragged. Was thinking about going skydiving. Think it'll make it? Dr. Wilson crossed his arms across his chest. Still out here trying to defy death, huh? I shrugged. If you answer the questionnaire truthfully, it's likely they wouldn't let you proceed anyway. I groaned. Discrimination at its finest. Here I was thinking, being a black man in America had its difficulties. I shook my head. A black man with a heart disease? Damn. More ways to hold me back, I joked. Glad to see you in good spirits, Nico, Dr. Wilson told me as he headed to the door. Don't do anything that will test the limits of your heart. Got it? My lips tightened and I didn't make any promises. Like Dr. Wilson said, since my diagnosis, that was the one thing I promised myself. I'd live fully. The disease had taken away enough. I deserved to be out there living it up, making up for what was lost. At least that's what I told myself. I figured after a life-altering diagnosis, I had two options. Retreat and live life carefully, afraid of what could happen next, or bounce back, better than I was before. There was a third, less interesting option. Make sure my legacy lived on through my seed. I called that one the Nick Cannon option. And because I wasn't the fatherly type, that option was off the table for me. I was good with the favorite uncle title at most. I hopped down from the exam table, bundled up the bare all hospital gown, and used my shooting arm to shoot it into the bin beside me. Once I was dressed and exiting the doctor's office, helmet in hand, I was ready to hit up the nearest bar for a toast to 10 years of living. The streets of Atlanta weren't easy to navigate during rush hour, but on the back of my all-black Suzuki GSX R1000, I was weaving in and out of cars, zipping past the standstill. Pulling up to the establishment, I made sure the few ladies walking in heard my engine rev before I parked nearby. A couple of years ago, I picked up another daring adventure. I started riding a bike and hadn't stopped. The adrenaline rush as the wind whipped past me gave me that feeling that I was dribbling the ball down the court. ready to shoot as I watched everyone in awe of my athletic abilities. Maybe it was risking it, as my mama tried to tell me, not the safest way I could spend my second chance. But what good was a second chance if I tiptoed through life as if it couldn't be taken from me in a blink? I remember that as I strolled into the bar, on the lookout for Hendrix and eyeing any woman that could have been my adventure for the night. "Yo!" I yelled as I walked up to the bar. Hendrix was in the middle of his order to the bartender when I told him, "Let me grab an old-fashioned." I leaned against the bar and looked around. Happy hour was packed. I looked down the bar and saw the ladies who were walking in when I pulled up. One with dreads down her back was looking my way. "Damn, bruh," I whispered to Hendrix as he handed me a drink. "I may go down and chat with old girl." He looked down the bar in her direction, then smiled back at me. "Do you, bruh?" He smirked. "What better way to celebrate than to have someone to take home with you tonight?" "Come on," I told him. "You are still single, right?" Hendrix and I had been friends since high school. We balled on the same court, both of us breaking school records, attracting scouts from the best schools. When my career ended, his continued. He had lived the dream I always imagined. College ball, drafted into the NBA, but now he was back, retired and running a car dealership. And all that time, all the chicks likely throwing themselves at him, he stayed single, at times. "Yeah, man," he sighed as if being single was a bad thing. "Let's go." He nodded in their direction. Before either of us could speak, the ladies looked up to us and one mentioned, "Were you the one on that bike?" After noticing my helmet in my arm. I nodded and rested it on the floor in front of me. "And you?" She narrowed her eyes. "Are you Hendrix Moore?" Hendrix nodded his head. The usual smile that lit up his face didn't appear, a sign that he was really in his feelings about his latest breakup. "I'm Nico." I held out my free hand. "You?" She told me her name was Lizzie. Her friend introduced herself, keeping her eye on Hendrix. "Nice to meet you, Lizzie." Lizzie cozied into my side, asking questions about my bike, questions that let me know she was very familiar. At one point in time, I was going to buy one. She smiled softly before telling me, but talked myself out of it. "If you are ever interested in riding, I got you." Her eyes widened. "In fact," I told her, "where are you headed after this?" She looked over at her friend before responding. "I was probably headed back to my place." Then she quickly added, "But we just met. I probably shouldn't hop on the back of your bike." Her nose scrunched up. I wagged my head. "You're probably right." Instead of riding down the highway, we stayed at the bar, all of us getting better acquainted. I learned that she was a teacher, and the stories she told about her second graders concreted my desire to stay in the uncle lane. "One kid has this thing with jumping out of his seat every couple of hours." She laughed. "Just dancing for no damn reason." Then she added, "It's irritating, but I must admit the shit is funny." She laughed. "Most days I can ignore it and keep teaching. Some days I have to bite my tongue to keep from laughing." "Are all the kids as lively?" I asked. With her hand tapping the rim of her glass, she told me, "You know, they are all unique, but not all of them bounce off the walls all day." "Enough of me." She fanned her hand toward me. "Tell me more about you." Her eyes scanned from my feet up my body till they reached my eyes again. "Do you play ball too?" My sheer height alone, 6'5", often elicited the same exact question too often. I looked behind me to Hendrix, still talking with her friend. At Lizzie, I shook my head. "No, I played in high school." "Were you any good?" That question reminded me of my days on the court, the 20 points I could easily put on the board each game. When I explained, staying humble, Hendrix spoke up from beside me. "This guy right here was a legend," he smiled at Lizzie. "One of the best players coming out of Georgia." "Coming from the guy who played years in the NBA," I laughed. Lizzie's eyes narrowed and she asked, "Who was better?" Neither me nor Hendrix responded. We competed during practice, played hard during the game. I cheered for him during each of his college and NBA games. When I fainted, then got the diagnosis, Hendrix was the one who visited the most. He didn't try to tell me everything would be okay. He loved basketball as much as I did, and he knew playing professionally was all either of us wanted to do. You are both modest, Lizzie smiled, then winked at her friend. I like that. Then she slid her cup across the bar toward the bartender before she told me, I think I'll take you up on that ride. Good, I told her. As we walked down the street to my bike, I thought skydiving would have been exhilarating, but as Lizzie wrapped her arms around my waist, I thought, I'd rather die fucking than jumping out of a plane anyway. And that, folks, is the end of chapter 1. If you would like to continue reading, you can get the book on ebook. You can get it on paperback in my TikTok shop. Or you can continue listening to it from someone who is way better than me in voice acting. And that is available on Audible and on my direct store. And the links are in the bio.